Hi, and welcome to Woven Homeschool. Today we're going to talk about what you actually need to homeschool and a few simple mindset shifts for if you ever find yourself unexpectedly homeschooling. It's spring of 2020 in the United States, and if you're listening to this when it's first released, you know what's happening right now. We're dealing with coronavirus here. Thanks to the spread of the virus, we're now dealing with stores and businesses closing. We're dealing with food insecurity because everyone's buying up what's at the store. We're dealing with shortages of healthcare supplies. We're dealing with worrying about our elderly loved ones. And on top of it all, we're dealing with school closures. Honestly, if you're a parent, keeping up with your kids' school is probably just one more thing to stress out about on top of all of this. Suddenly, parents everywhere are being thrown into a homeschool lifestyle without any warning or preparation. Adjusting to homeschooling under the best of circumstances can be a challenge, so I can understand how doing it like this would feel like a total whirlwind. I think that a lot of homeschool moms are trying to help with this. I've been seeing more and more advice than ever about how to homeschool, how to set up a routine for your child, and countless ideas of fun educational activities to do at home together. Honestly, I think if I were a non-homeschooling mom, I would feel pretty overwhelmed by all of that. So this lesson is not going to throw more resources at you because honestly, if you're looking for activities, you're going to be able to find that just fine without my help. It is, however, going to talk about what you actually need to educate your kids at home. What you actually need are just a few simple mindset shifts. But before we begin, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Abigail Zeger. At the time of this recording, my husband and I have been married for almost 12 years, and we have 4 children together. We live in Pennsylvania, and we have a little house here on 1.5 acres of land with a small handful of chickens and a big garden. I was a public school kid myself, turned music education major, and eventually I turned into a homeschooling mom. I've been teaching in some capacity for the last 11 years, and I'm now in my 5th official year of homeschooling. I write at the blog wovenhomeschool.com. That's WOVEN, homeschool.com. If you're here visiting from the Homestead Crash Course Summit, I also have a blog about our homesteading adventures called they'renotourgoats.com. One other quick note, this lesson was specifically made because of the coronavirus school closings. However, even if you find yourself suddenly home educating for some other reason, much of the information here will still remain relevant for you. Before we begin, what don't you need to homeschool? Well, you don't need to keep up with public school. You don't need an imposed schedule, beautiful activities that are worthy of your Pinterest news feed, or perfect textbooks or curriculum. You don't need to reproduce a school environment at home, especially one with bright lights, separate desks, and timed classes. And you don't need teaching expertise to homeschool well. Take it from a former education major. You can do a good job of teaching your kids without having that degree behind your name. What you do need to homeschool is a good perspective, a different view of education, a routine that fits you, and your best effort. Let's take a closer look at each of these. First thing first, I want you to check your perspective. You might need to take a little bit of time to find a good one. When you're in the middle of a difficult situation, it's really easy to feel overwhelmed, fearful, worried about everything. But one good thing about a crisis is that it has a way of bringing out what we hold most dear. So I would ask yourself this. If everything was stripped away, if you really ran out of groceries and you had no food left in the fridge, if your business folded or you lost your job entirely because of this outbreak, if something catastrophic happened, what would be most important to you? After thinking about it myself, I had to answer loving my family and trying to give them the absolute best that I could. Maybe not surprisingly, it was not my child's math grade or making sure we did writing every day while we were off of school. Really, what we want when everything goes awry is we want to make sure our family is taken care of and that we love them unconditionally during that time. I would encourage you to focus on relationship more than you worry about the specific academic activities that you do during this time. I love this quote from Ainsley Arment. Homeschooling is essentially parenting amplified. It brings out the best in your kids, but it can also bring out the worst. That's simply the downside to living under the same roof. The good news is kids are highly moldable and will exhibit the fruit of your relationship with them. That's from Ainsley Arment from a little book that she made called Should I Homeschool? The full article can be found at bewildandfree.org. Homeschooling is parenting amplified. That is really true. You can let learning at home become another obstacle, another painful task that you have to get through, another reason for fights and grumbling through your work for the day. Or you can let it be a time for relationship building and bringing out the best in both of you. And let me just tell you, this is something experienced homeschool parents, myself included, struggle with probably every day. Your time working on academics can be approached with a reluctant, resentful attitude, or it can be done with patience, openness to your child's thoughts and ideas, connectivity with them. You can work towards using any academic learning time as an opportunity to foster a relationship instead of hindering it. The next thing I'd recommend for you is to really try to work on enjoying each other. Look, you're going to be cooped up for the next several weeks if you're listening to this during coronavirus. It's going to be really easy to get on each other's nerves and to feel like you're going crazy. And it's easy to say that your family is the most important priority to you, but sometimes we don't always act like it with our words. So during the time that you're home and trying to homeschool, really practice enjoying each other. Remind yourself to laugh about things and laugh together. Remind yourself to enjoy the little moments. Try to let go of those things that irritate you and those little inconsistencies. And look for the things you appreciate about one another. That is especially true during your home education efforts. You're going to have missteps and frustrations, but keep practicing. Keep coming back and working on taking pleasure in each other and in the process. Finally, as part of your fresh perspective that you're going to put on, I want you to go at your own pace during this time. It's easy to feel worried about keeping up with public school pacing during the time off. You might worry that you're not doing enough for your child or that they're going to have so much to catch up on when they get back to school. But before you walk down that road, let me ask you this. How many times do you see a mom worried about her child who isn't walking yet? They pass 9 months, they pass 12 months, they pass 15 months, and then all of a sudden, when we least expect it, we see them taking steps across the room. Or maybe there's a kid who's battled reading lessons in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then all of a sudden you catch them reading a Harry Potter novel on their own, just because they really wanted to read it. Here's the point. There are children who do have legitimate learning delays, and I understand that, and I am not at all invalidating that. But in general, kids learn at different rates. It's not always evenly paced. Sometimes there are times where there's a lull, and then it comes all at once. But what about catching up after this extended time off? I recently read an article on how children missing school this year due to coronavirus may not be able to get into college because they'll be so far behind. I'm going to go ahead and be bold and tell you to get those thoughts right out of your head. You know what? Kids have breaks from school all the time. They have Thanksgiving, Christmas, spring break. They have 10 weeks off every summer. And yes, this is a longer time off from school than usual. But this is not going to do in their education once and for all. There's no reason why they won't be able to catch up on these materials that they missed for a few months of school at the end of the year. You know what? I would like to think that being home from school during a difficult time might just help these kids to learn some skills that they wouldn't have gotten in the classroom. In fact, they might become stronger, more creative, more resilient, more grateful adults. So when you start doing school at home, know that you don't have to follow anyone's pace but your own. You aren't behind anyone. You don't need to keep up with the pace that the public school would set. The point is just to keep moving forward. The second thing that you need to have a successful home education experience is a different view of what education could look like. First thing, I want you to try to think about using school materials that fit you and your family. If you have the freedom to do this, I would invite you to go ahead and explore educational materials that fit your family's interests and personalities. You can learn core academic subjects through many different means. It doesn't just have to be a textbook. You could try educational apps. You could try free or inexpensive unit studies online. You could try online classes. You could do some hands-on activities together, or you could just read a whole lot of library books if your child loves reading. On the other hand, you may feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of materials available to you. If you're super busy or overwhelmed by the idea of trying to pick something you like, then you might find it simpler to go ahead and just follow the textbook. And if so, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The point is to find materials that work for you and your family in the stage you're at right now. I also want you to try to find value in what you're already doing. A lot of times we only think of school as the boxes that we can check off from the assignments for the day or when we're sitting in a classroom. That's what we tend to think of as what counts as school or what counts as learning. But let me ask you this. Do you read bedtime stories to your little kids? Do you ask your preschooler to go find the can of tomatoes for you in the pantry? You say, look for the tomatoes. It starts with a T. Tomatoes. That's language arts. Or do you have a preteen who is part of robotics club or they love playing Minecraft with their friends? Those are STEM activities: science, technology, engineering, and math. Do you discuss world events over dinner together with your older students? That's social studies and current events. Do you enjoy taking nature walks as a family or going on hikes? Well, that's an unofficial way of doing botany, biology, phys ed. These things may not feel like official school, but there's no reason why they shouldn't count as part of a child's education. I also want to challenge you to think outside the box. Learning isn't just limited to math, reading, and writing. Think about how you could explore outside the box subjects like arts and music. What about creative free play, outdoor exploration, sports, exercise, mental health, emotional intelligence, how we relate to each other, and social skills, self-regulation, emergency preparedness, first aid, and safety? What if you took time to explore these other fun things like cooking, sewing, decorating, traditional skills like canning or gardening or weaving things or sewing, life skills like car repairs, banking, grocery shopping? There's so many different things you could explore, and none of them have to look like the types of things you would typically get in a classroom. In fact, during a long-term school closure would be a great time to explore some of those things that kids don't normally get to learn. So I encourage you, get creative, think outside the box. What are you interested in? What do you want to learn about? Chase it. Go ahead and do that now while you have a chance. Another way to change your view of education is to think of how you can use your home as an educational asset. Sometimes we feel like the lack of structure at home can be a disadvantage to learning. Like if our child isn't sitting up straight at a desk with their paper at the proper angle, they won't be able to focus and do their work. However, if we capitalize on the home environment, we can actually find a lot of advantages to it. Home is the place where you flop on the couch, where you cry in your room when you've had a bad day, when you play games on the tablet. And so if we take all those comforts and apply them to learning, it can make learning a lot more pleasant. Why not read on the couch together? Light a candle while you work on school, or spread out wide with art supplies at the kitchen table. Use different rooms as quiet spaces. That's one thing you wouldn't get at school, a whole room to yourself. You can find ways to bring that comfort of home into education. Finally, make it fun. Make it enjoyable. Learning doesn't always have to be drudgery. There are a gazillion ways to make learning fun. And guess what? You don't have to spend a gazillion hours prepping really pretty activities to post on your social media. You can do little things like serving cookies over math at the kitchen table. Or maybe you can do math through board games. Monopoly's great for starters. You could have popcorn and a movie night to round up a family book club. So read the book and then look for the corresponding movie and watch that all together and discuss it. You could draw a science diagram in chalk on the driveway instead of on paper in a notebook. You could go do school at the park together or go to the coffee shop. So there's so many different ways that you can make school really fun. So many different ways to explore learning besides sitting with a textbook, and so much out there to learn. It's really a wonderful world of exploration. All right, so the two that we've covered so far are you need a good perspective to homeschool successfully, and you need a different view of education. Next thing that we're going to talk about is a routine that fits you. So many parents right now are wondering how to keep up a good routine with kids while they're all home all day. And you can certainly find inspiration and lots of sample schedules online right now. But no one knows exactly what your life looks like and exactly what your routine is. So only you can answer these questions, and only you can decide how your day should run. So I'm going to ask you these. Feel free to pause this and jot down the answers as you go through. So what is your schedule normally like right now? Are you working? Are you working at home? Do you have to leave the house? Are you a stay-at-home mom or dad? Are you a single parent juggling raising your kids while also trying to bring in a paycheck? Think about what your routine is like right now. I don't want you to bend over backwards and try to change everything for this. What kind of white space do you have right now in your schedule? Do you need to free up more time to dedicate to your children intentionally? If so, is there anything that you can let go of to create that time in your schedule? All right, next I want you to think of your home education goals. Do you have assignments that you need to fulfill for your school? So if your school sent home specific requirements, obviously you're going to have to do those. But if you don't have assignments that you need to do, ask yourself this. Do I want to be really rigorous with my home education? Do I want to have sort of a basic time of academic learning and then a lot of free play or free interest exploration for older children? Would I rather take on an unschooling approach, letting the child take the lead in what we learn during this time? You might not really know yet what you want. That's okay. Take some time and think about it. Journal about it. If your child is old enough to have a say, then ask them about it too. Ask what they would like to learn. All right, now I want you to think about how you're going to fit those educational goals into your current schedule. If you need to fulfill requirements for your kids' school, if they sent you home with specific assignments, then obviously you're going to need to prioritize getting that done. But if you don't have that, then you have a bit more freedom about how structured you want to be or need to be. So start thinking about during those white space times in your days. If you're stay at home, you're going to have probably more of them than if you're a working parent, especially if you had to work outside of the home. But think about how during those white space times, you can purposefully work towards your education goals during those times. So, how long will each of those tasks take? How long do you want to spend on math or reading? How long do you want to spend on woodworking or nature walks, depending on what your goals are, right? How flexible can you be to fit those in? So just jot some of those things down and think about when you can start plugging in those educational routines into your day. As you think about that, I want you to know that routines can vary widely. So school happens Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 for most of us. But when you're homeschooling, you can do it pretty much any time that works for you and your children. You can homeschool on nights and weekends. You can do it 3 mornings a week. You can do it during your baby's nap time. You can have your child do some work independently if they're old enough while you're out at work, and then come back and check up on their work when you get home. You could forget formal schooling altogether during this time and just make time to go for walks or play board games when you are home. So some parents have set times for everything, like math at 9 a.m., language arts at 9:45, snack at 10:30. But more commonly, I sort of see a gentle routine in the day. Morning academics, lunch, afternoon outdoor play, quiet time, dinner. For me, that's sort of my regular routine, except on days when I work outside of the home. And then it's I work, grandparents do academic things with them, then I come home, check up on them, and do some other activities with them when I get home. Older kids may need to do school around their part-time job, dual enrollment courses, or hanging out with their friends. So here's the main point, is that routines can vary widely from family to family, but ultimately your routine should fit you and your family. So there's nothing wrong with looking at model schedules for help or for inspiration, but don't try to mold your schedule around anyone else's unless it actually works for you. All right? One last word before we move on from this. Be willing to tweak your routine. When you first start homeschooling, there's so much to adjust to, and especially if you're homeschooling unexpectedly due to a school closure. So give a routine a try for a week or two. And if it doesn't work, then ask yourself what didn't work. Try to be more realistic for next week. Adjust how much time you're spending on things. Don't be afraid to tweak things and try again. All right. So we've talked about so far, to homeschool successfully, you need to find a good perspective. You need to adjust your view of what education looks like. You need a routine that fits you and your family. And last but not least, you just need to try to do your best. You don't need to be a teacher. You don't need to be a perfect parent to do well with homeschooling. All anyone can ask of any parent is that you love your kids and you try to do your best, right? Let's look at how this specifically applies to homeschooling. I want you to be ready to learn and be ready to grow. This is something that really took me by surprise when I was a homeschooling parent because I was an education major at first. I thought I knew how to teach my kids. Surprise, I had a lot to learn still. So, here's my question for you. Are you naturally curious about life? Do you want to explore topics you don't know much about? That's something I've really had to work on over my homeschooling years. Half of homeschooling is just about being willing to learn. I don't know a single homeschool parent who knows everything they're teaching their kids. It's not about being a teacher dispensing all the knowledge to your children. It's about coming alongside of them and learning with them and finding solutions together. So if you have that, then you can make it through any subject. Or you can find someone who can teach it to both of you. Try on a growth mindset. Be willing to learn and grow personally. Recognize that you're going to fail many, many times over and over again, but that's part of learning and growing together. Too many times we throw in the towel too quickly. When things get hard, we want to just give up because we think we just can't do it. I just wasn't made to do this, right? But listen, it's through trial and error, failure, hardship, all of those things that we really grow, right? It's how we develop character. When we're not afraid of bad days, not afraid to tweak things and try new things, and when we're willing to grow personally, our kids see that and they follow that example. So this is, I think, even more important for the parent than it is for the child, because if you're doing it, your child's going to see it and to follow it. Last but not least, part of doing your best means just relax. Love your kids. I love this quote from Jill Churchill. There's no way to be a perfect mother and a million ways to be a good one. I think this quote could be said for mothers, fathers, homeschoolers, teachers, all sorts of people who work with kids. You do your best every day, and sometimes that means you get all your schoolwork done. It means you get all your housework done. It means you get any work responsibilities done, and you've got a hot dinner on the table. Those are the days you feel like you're just rocking it as a parent, right? And that's great when you have those days. But guess what? Sometimes doing your best means recognizing your weaknesses, knowing that by 10 a.m. when everybody's having a meltdown and you've got a migraine and your toddler's getting a cold and everyone's just exhausted and not doing well, sometimes doing your best means saying, okay, guys, let's put away the books. Let's pop in a movie and just hang out a little bit and relax. Spend that time focusing on relationship instead. Spend it enjoying each other. This time together is really short-lived, and it's okay to take those moments. It's okay to order the pizza for dinner. It's okay to step back and relax sometimes, because you need to just be aware of your natural limitations and be aware of the fact that this whole thing is a process. It has its ups and downs. Not every day needs to be perfect. Remember that we can't control everything. We can't guarantee educational outcomes for our kids. We can't guarantee a lifetime of security, and we can't guarantee a lack of hardship for them. But we can love them day after day. We can apologize when we're wrong, and we can come back and try again and again and again. We can keep on doing our best each day, both in parenting and in this strange home education adventure that we just happen to be on right now. So, if you ever find yourself unexpectedly homeschooling, remember, try to keep a good perspective. Don't be afraid to rethink your idea of education. Find a routine that works for you and your family, and just do your best. I hope this lesson has been helpful to you. If it is, feel free to share it with a friend. I also invite you to visit wovenhomeschool.com and sign up for our newsletter there. When you sign up, you'll receive an email each weekend from me with helpful articles, inspiration, and encouragement for both new and experienced homeschooling parents. I'll also be sure to link to any relevant resources below this video for you. I hope that you and your family can ride through this crazy adventure of a time together and come out stronger on the other side. Thanks so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.